are live in the back. And everyone now says, yes, you understand you are live on Facebook. All right, Stephanie, are we good to go? Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so thank you, Roger, for your introduction. And glad that you're with us today. You were back on campus last week for an event, I believe, and I saw you, didn't have a chance to say hello, so it's good to see you again today. And thank you for joining us. Tyler?
Yes, good morning, and thank you all for having me. It's always a privilege anytime I can interact with my alma mater in any way. My name is Tyler Campbell. I was a political science and history double major at Georgetown College. I graduated in 2004. I am currently the executive director of the Kentucky Telecom Association. So I run the day-to-day operations of the association, which is a statewide trade association. I am also their chief lobbyist. So much of my career has been spent in government affairs. I've had about 14 years of experience lobbying in Frankfurt and doing some work in Washington, D.C. Really enjoy that aspect of my job and have been in government relations now for most of my career. And I was also a part of the President's House Association during my time at Georgetown College. So as Roger succinctly said, you know.
Thanks so much, Tyler. All right, Paola.
Hey guys, my name is Paola Rowe. I am an 07 graduate of Georgetown. I'm also one of the first students that came from the partnership with the Colegio Bautista in Temuco, Chile. So I was an international student and got to learn a whole lot at Georgetown, but I got to love a lot of people out there. And much like Tyler and Roger, I love my time at Georgetown, and anytime I get to spend some time with you guys, it's a privilege. My major in Georgetown was religion, and I had like a kinesiology minor. And I am a youth minister currently part-time. And then my full-time job is, as you guys can see, I work at a bank. I work for a community trust bank now.
Great, thank you so much, Paula, for joining us. It's good to see you. I think we were at a conference together a few weeks ago and weren't able to connect. So it's always lovely to have you joining us to share your story with our students. Lori Beth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Beth Miller. I was Lori Beth Royce when I was at Georgetown. I am the older generation on the screen. I graduated from Georgetown in 1993, had a political science communications double major. Good old Dr. Chi and Margaret Grinnells taught me so many things. Currently, I am the assistant director for Friend for Life. Friend for Life is a cancer support network. The easiest explanation and parallel of it is we match patients who have just been diagnosed with cancer with survivors, sort of like a big brother, big sister organization. And our tagline is facing cancer with someone who's been there. So we do everything to match as many demographics as possible so that they can have a big brother or a big sister who's now a survivor of their recent diagnosis. I live in Lexington and not too far from our dear alma mater.
Great, thank you so much. So now to get a little bit of who's in the room. How many freshmen? One. Go freshmen. Sophomores? One. Juniors? Two. And our beloved 2 seniors. Great. How many of you are here today for Nexus credit? Yes, don't be shy, it's fine. Yes, we've got some hands raised. You all understand that Nexus, CEP, it's had a lot of different iterations. How many of you are here because of your interest maybe in nonprofits? Okay, great, a couple. And interest in ministry? Okay, how many of you all are just here because you wanted to be here? And that's awesome, that's great. Okay, so a little bit of a mixture of students who are in the room today. We also have one of our faculty, Dr. Derek Hatch, who's a professor in our religion department. So always grateful for faculty supporting these types of events. So there's a little bit about who is in the room. And so our first question is really, what did you learn or take away from your time at Georgetown that has had the most impact on you? That can be personally, professionally, however you interpret that question. And we will start with Roger.
I guess a few things. First of all this buzz now about this idea of deconstruction, right? And, deconstructing your faith. And like, that's this new thing. And I feel like, I like the party here. I feel like I was a Southern Baptist kid, came to Baptist college, and I didn't know much of the difference between going Georgetown or Boyce College at Southern Seminary. And thank God on this train instead. And what was different between, say, Georgetown and maybe going to religion department at a secular university was that the professors at Georgetown, this was not Sunday school, this was not a Bible college, this was historical readings of scripture. They were sympathetic. These were men and women who had given their life to teaching the Christian scriptures, and so to challenging you a way that they were also there personally and professionally to kind of help you put things back together. If you were like, wow, maybe it took longer than 6 days for God to create the heavens and the earth. I don't know. So that's just intellectually, in terms of my faith, was a big part of college. But professionally, I think in terms of, I had an internship at Georgetown that was real formative for me. I got my first professional job while I was still at Georgetown. I started pastoring in college. I learned a lot about community organizing. I helped organize students to go to the Kentucky Baptist Convention, to vote, loosen ties with the convention there. Did other community activism. I know now it's more activism a lot of ways, and I didn't really think of it that way at the time. But I also learned a lot about community. I'd not had friends in my life like I made at Georgetown. And not only are many of those men still dear friends of mine, I learned a lot about making friends and making friends for life. So some of the lifelong friends I've made since then, I feel like I really developed skills while I was at Georgetown. Then finally, and I talked to all sorts of friends and alumni who are doing different things now, who come back to this, the importance of a liberal arts college, the importance of a liberal arts education where it's not just some gen ed that you got to check a box that somebody doesn't care. You take a real class in that area that you didn't go to college for. I took world politics and learned a lot about world politics. I took biology and learned a lot about biology, and English literature, and the sorts of things that help round you out, so that when you go to school to be an entomologist, you learned about Shakespeare, and you're a more well-rounded person. And I think especially in ministry or in nonprofit or in lobbying, power has to know how to have a cocktail conversation, so I think that's all really important.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and shift to Paola. I think, we're going to have some folks who might have to mute their screen at a certain point, so we might get out of order. So be ready. Hopefully that's okay. Paola, would you like to share a little bit about what your big takeaway from your time at Georgetown was?
Sure. So, like I said, for me, coming to Georgetown was a huge life experience. I left my home, my country, my whole family behind to a completely different continent. And I really didn't speak great English. I'm sure Roger probably remembers at the beginning, my English was very broken. But so for me, it was a lot of moving pieces that first year. But so I've learned a ton of things. One, I will never forget, I always make fun of Roger Ward because he was my advisor, and he put me on the hardest classes my freshman year. My first semester of learning English, I had biology 101, I had chemistry 101. Like, I had hard classes because I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. So he's like, well, this is the route I think we need to go. And so with that, I love the sense of community that Georgetown embraced around me. I will never forget Dr. Stevens in the biology department for my final. He actually got my final translated in Spanish so I could take it, and not have to be with a dictionary trying to find things, just so I could have a good grade. Because he knew that I understood the concept. I couldn't necessarily always just put it in paper. And it was little things like that that taught me compassion and being kind. I think that's one of the things that Georgetown excels at. As a female, I love the idea of the liberal arts school. It's not something that you see in Latin America. So being able to learn a little bit of everything really helped me to explore really where I wanted it to end up, right? So I started thinking kinesiology was it. And then I had a couple of philosophy classes and then religion classes. And I felt like God had called me to ministry, but here I am, a female. Like, what am I supposed to do? Right? Like, I don't have a space. And then I had a beloved teacher, and I know he's a little controversial sometimes, but Dwight Moody is somebody that really pushed me and told me to really think outside the box and why I was being called and what about me made a difference, right? And so I think for me, one of my greatest joys about Georgetown really is just how they impacted how I want to be treated and how I want to make sure that I treat my clients in my day-to-day work, but then also my students in my youth ministry, and being able to just think outside the box. And sometimes just because somebody looks like you may not necessarily mean that they have the same background as you. And I think Georgetown did a really good job of making sure we were inclusive. And that I love that Roger used the word community, because I do feel like we were and we are a good community, and I'm so grateful for that.
Wow, that was so wonderful, Paola. I have chills, I think, on a couple of things that you said, just about the community that you experienced and that inclusivity, and welcoming, community that you were a part of during your time here at Georgetown. So thank you for sharing that. Tyler, let's hear a little bit about your takeaways from your time at Georgetown.
Yeah, I can probably echo a couple of the comments that have already been said, but honestly, I think the greatest thing about Georgetown College is what you take outside of the classroom. Like what you learn in the classroom is important to give you a foundation. The liberal arts education, I think, is very important. It's diversity of thought. You're exposed to a lot of different subjects. You're exposed to a lot of different schools of thought within various disciplines. But the community, as Paola said, the community is what makes Georgetown. You leave home, you're living amongst other people that are you may have similar backgrounds to, you may not, but that really reflects what you're going to experience once you leave Georgetown. And so, diversity of thought, diversity of background. And so when you leave Georgetown, the lessons that you will take, the most important lessons that you will take away from your time at Georgetown College won't be the lessons you learn in the classroom, so to speak. I hope that does not offend any professor that may be in the room, but the most valuable education I received at Georgetown College was probably the experiences that I had outside of the classroom. And that's one thing I want to tell anybody that's looking, that thinks you may go down one path. Always bet on yourself. Always bet on yourself. Be your best advocate, because you know you better than anybody else. Nobody else is going to advocate for you. So I would say, always invest in yourself. Be willing to take a risk. If you feel like you're being called into something, always bet on yourself, because those opportunities only come along so many times. I went to Georgetown College thinking I was going to be a business major in this. Then I thought about law school, and I never really anticipating that I would get into government affairs, but I ended up taking some political science classes and history. And I'd always had an interest in civics and civics education. But I really thought when I went to Georgetown College, I was going to go down one path and go into business. And then I found myself pulled in another direction. And the experiences that I had there from my interactions with the individuals within the president's house and in student life, and I don't even know if they're there, the college Republicans, when I was there, I found a community there of individuals that, we were able to share thoughts and actually talk about a lot of diverse topics and just I love the opportunities that Georgetown gave to me in order to experience on such a small campus so much diversity of thought and as Paula said, being inclusive and so many individuals that you meet from different walks of life within a campus that at the time that I was there, I think had around 1,300 students. And so it's invaluable, the experience that you will take away from Georgetown. But those experiences outside of the classrooms are probably what I value most of all.
Great, thank you, Tyler. And I hope no one will ever be offended when we talk about those. I love to call them experiential learning opportunities, right? I mean, that's what we come to, talk about internships, as Roger mentioned, and those other experiences that really do shape, and reinforce what you're learning in the classroom and help challenge maybe some of those thoughts. So thank you. Lori Beth, let's hear a little bit about your takeaways from Georgetown.
Well, my colleagues here on the panel today have stolen all the good things. I learned a lot at Georgetown, but I'm going to have to stick with Tyler's answer of what you learn outside the classroom. I was in a program at Georgetown where someone would remind me, Lori Beth, it didn't matter how good you looked or how good your hair was if you were late to a meeting. And I can still be standing here in my bathroom and fussing with what hair I have right now and think, LB, you got to get out the door, because you learned way back when that promptness and politeness and manners and etiquette matter a whole lot more than how you present yourself, i.e. specifically how your hair is. I learned that I was going to be, when I started Georgetown, I was going to be a lawyer, and I was on a direct path. I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. And I want the students and everyone in the room to know that you can have U-turns, and they're not mistakes. They're not wrong turns. They're U-turns. I had a faculty member who thought I necessarily needed a business management degree, and I didn't, and I haven't needed it yet. I'm currently in the nonprofit world, but I went through the world of higher education, and I actually have an EDD in higher education. I did all the fun stuff outside of the classroom as a student at Georgetown, and that paved the way for me to have a career in higher education, specifically working with first-year students, specifically working with residence life and student life and activities and clubs and Greeks and leadership and things like that. And if I hadn't done that at Georgetown, I wouldn't realize that that was really what I was supposed to be doing. And whether it's a calling from a spiritual perspective or whether it's a service calling to students, that's really where I had my career. And I started out working actually at Georgetown as a young graduate in '93 as a development associate, which was a bogus title in case anyone didn't know that. But that was AKA known as the development grunt. So whether there was an issue with parking between the students and the administration, or whether there was an issue with fundraising, or whether there was a homecoming event that needed a little extra attention, that's what I did. And again, hands-on, having fun. I learned that's what I wanted to do when I quote unquote grew up. And I think those kind of things, certainly I needed my foundation in being a good student. Certainly I learned so much in communications from our communications staff there, but it's those kind of things that really set the path. And it's not only the activities and the events, but it was sort of being in the trenches and figuring things out yourself and being coached and knowing that you had people an arm's length away just to help you figure it out if you couldn't figure it out yourself. So it's those kind of things that I would say that I took away from Georgetown that really made the difference. I didn't go to law school, and I'm so glad I didn't. But I was a vice president of student affairs before I left that field. And surprisingly, those of you in the room wouldn't know Bert Hawkins, but it's amazing whenever you realize that those folks were coaches, and Dr. Bessessis and James Keppes and people like that just really helped you find your niche. And there's a niche out there for everybody. So if you think that you're on your mind is focused on a path of a certain academic field, pursue it, do it, kill it. Be a rock star in that field, but also don't close your mind to opportunities that can give you a little peripheral perspective.
Yeah, so good. I don't know how many of you have maybe attended other career ready events that we've had this semester. I know my colleague Stephanie in the back can attest to this, that I'm not making this up. But every single session, I have not peppered you all to say anything specific, have I? Promise. Every single session, someone has had this exact statement of the fact that it is not a linear path where you are today is you're not going to be on a linear path. It is going to be, and I've seen that name, like a bunch of different squiggly lines and connections and opportunities and aha moments and seasons of calling where that professor is telling you like this is what you know the path you're going to be on, and you may or may not agree. You may not agree that you need a business management degree. That's what is going to get you where you want to be. So thank you. I want to pause for any questions before we move on to our next question for our panelists. So does anyone in this room have any questions for our guests today? Not everyone at once. Okay, perfect. So next we want to hear, and I'm going to jump around a little bit. So just you guys feel like you're good with that. So hopefully tell us a little bit about your professional and personal journey. And what would you tell your college-aged self, knowing what you know now? So I'm going to start with Tyler on this one.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. My personal journey at Georgetown, to talking about Roger, I didn't have a faith background at all. What led me to Georgetown College, I was a Scott County kid. And I had an opportunity to attend there. I received a Toyota scholarship. And so I was always very thankful for the individuals at Toyota who paved the way for my education at Georgetown, and really enjoyed my time there. I met she was my college sweetheart, and we married pretty soon after we graduated, and we have lived in Georgetown since then. But I really did, as I think Lori Beth said, I kind of fell into a role that I really hadn't anticipated. And I was able to explore that, and that really happened because of connections that I had with the political science department at Georgetown College at the time. Dr. Gallagher had a line into an internship in Frankfurt with the Legislative Research Commission. So I worked as an intern on nonpartisan staff, learned about the bill drafting process and how, research and research methods. And I really fell in love with my internship there. And I said, well, this may be something I want to pursue. And so once I did that, I ended up hanging around Frankfurt and bugging other people in order to get additional internships. I followed up. I decided, like Lori Beth, I decided, well, I think I'm probably going to be a lawyer. I think I'll pursue political science and history. And then I decided, I really don't know if I want to practice law. I'm more interested in working and doing something maybe in the public sector and working in government. And so I pursued that. I went to grad school and received a master's from Eastern Kentucky University in public administration. And so I was still debating the law school bit at that point, but I went back to the Legislative Research Commission and pursued a graduate fellowship, worked as a bill drafter there, and was able to get on full time there for a couple of years. And really an opportunity came up from somebody that I knew at Georgetown College where there was an opening in government affairs. And they said, I think you would be good for this role. And so at that point, I was a couple years removed from grad school, and I pursued an opportunity with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. And so I went in and began lobbying on tax policy, energy and environmental issues for the business community. And from there, it's just been a succession of people that I've known and built relationships with during my time, whether it was at Georgetown College or in some capacity in my interactions in Frankfurt, that have led me to other job opportunities. And so to circle back about what we were talking about earlier, life is all about building relationships and maintaining relationships. And so the interactions that you have at Georgetown will carry you will carry with you throughout the rest of your life. And so you never know what opportunities you're going to have just by those interactions. And so now I'm currently the executive director for the Kentucky Telecom Association. I've been the executive director now. This will be my 7th year. As I've said, I've spent 14 years in government affairs. And so I've worked for private sector companies advocating for pro-growth and pro-economic development policies here in Kentucky to make it a bit more business-friendly state. I also worked and spent some time with the Kentucky League of Cities. And so I've worked in government affairs and communication roles with them, advocating for a lot of quality of life issues and what's important to cities throughout the Commonwealth, again, to make the state a better place to live and to interact with and grow. And so, and then I really took the opportunity and always thought that I wanted to go out on my own and have an opportunity to run an association. And again, it wasn't something that I'd really thought about at the time, but I said, I'm going to take this chance and do this. And, I've really enjoyed everything that I've learned here running a statewide trade association across the state. And so, and again, it's something that I believe in and passionate about. We advocate for expanding broadband access to rural areas of the Commonwealth that haven't had that access and the opportunities that go along with them. And so I really enjoy my job to this day. I enjoy the interactions that I've had, and I've developed some deep friendships in Frankfort and in Washington, D.C., and with individuals from all walks of life that I've interacted with and all across the country. And so, my foundation was my relationship with folks at Georgetown College in the political science department that got me started down this path. And so I credit directly that internship that I had my senior year at Georgetown College as a political science major with getting me started on this path.
Great. Thank you so much, Tyler. One thing I failed to mention earlier that really seemed a common thread, and I'm going to go ahead and let you know, Lori, Beth, I'm going to hand it over to you next. But something when you were talking about, your career in higher education, but you're now working in the nonprofit world. Tyler, you work in the nonprofit world, but also kind of in the realm of politics. You have this path where your interests can overlap with industry and also integrate with your calling. So I think that's just really something interesting, and that we want to kind of talk a little bit more about in the Center for Calling and Careers, just how those things can interplay. So not at all leading with what your response might be, Lori Beth, but I'd love to hear just a little bit about your journey and kind of what you might have told yourself when you were a student.
I have a couple points that I want to make right away before I forget them, and I don't want to be accused of speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but one of my comments would be, it's okay to be a bookworm. It's okay to figure out how you learn. Georgetown overall message would be, it is a super safe place, and you are going to be loved and valued as a person, and you're going to always have someone's always going to have your back. I learned how I learned at Georgetown. Someone referenced that biology class 101 freshman term. I was talking to another young person just this weekend about Dr. Beams and being an Asher and being the geek who studied. So it's taught me how I learned. It taught me how I think. It taught me how to get organized, and those kind of traits that are sort of foundational, core to who I am, carry on today. You can't see my workstation right now without Post-it notes everywhere, because that's how I organized at Georgetown, by academic subject. So that would be one thing I want to make sure I mention. The second thing I want to make sure I mention, as a student at Georgetown many years ago, I wish I had taken more risks. Like, I do wish I'd gone on a mission trip with the Baptist Student Union. I wish that I had not always sat at the same side or the same table or the same place in the CAF. I should have found more than one place to study in what was then Cook Memorial Library. Down in the basement, the stacks really, really stink, but I got past that, and that's where I studied. So as students in this conversation or hearing this panel, I would encourage you to, instead of going in and sitting over where you always sit in the CAF today at lunch, pick the other side. Or instead of always sitting with your friends, go up to a new person and meet them. I realize it's April and there probably aren't many people you don't feel like you don't know at Georgetown, but go make a new friend. As a freshman at Georgetown, I lived in Knight Hall, and we were really tight. All those Knight Hall women on that first floor, we were super tight. And it would have been nice, it would have been beneficial if I hadn't been so involved with those folks, and I had maybe looked at an extracurricular club, a college political organization, or something that was a little bit out of my grasp, something I wasn't familiar with. So I would encourage you to do those two things. It's okay to be a bookworm, but it's also important that you go out and meet and do new things. The things that maybe you're scared of. Like, I'm not sure I could go to Costa Rica. I realize spring break's probably past, but I'm not sure I could do that. But you know what? Georgetown's a safe place to question that. And Georgetown's a safe place to know that LB, if my friends call me LB, if you want to go, we'll make sure that, your white sneakers don't get too dirty. That kind of stuff, it's all safe. I had a career path that went from student affairs to student affairs to student affairs. And then I had an opportunity to jump into a nonprofit organization that means a whole lot to me. And I think that's a very good point that you make, Faith. Like for the nonprofits, there's so many niches in those worlds where you can serve. It's a whole nother world than higher education, but I'm glad I'm in it. I think you can probably tell I'm working from home, which COVID or not has been fabulous. But those are the things that I thought of as, what would I have told my freshman self who moved into Mary Frances Night Hall on a very hot August day? I wish I'd gotten a little bit more out of my comfort zone, but I'm glad I learned who I was. I worked at Georgetown for 5 years after I graduated in varying roles. I was actually the hall director of Allen Hall, which at the time was I don't know what gender it is right now. It was a female residence hall. And Georgetown maybe had a lingering effect on me because I had like a 4-year undergraduate and 5-year professional career. And so that's why it's had such an imprint or footprint on who I am.
Well, thank you, Lori Beth, for sharing a little bit of your extended Georgetown story. I also had an extended story similar to yours at my alma mater, and so we appreciate your service. I think one of the things that Lori Beth mentioned I want to point out is that whole idea of learning how to learn. We are working on our new QEP, our Quality Enhancement Plan, which is on metacognition. And so that is thinking about thinking. So how do we think about thinking? How do we process and reflect? And those are all really important things that I think we do really well here at Georgetown. Metacognition might be a new phrase that is new to you, but I think we espouse that, in our day-to-day often. So I just wanted to point that out. Paola, I'd love to hear a little bit about your professional and personal journey, and then any advice you give to yourself when you were a student, maybe sitting in the Hall of Fame room at the time,
Yeah.
right?
I love that question for a couple of reasons. I think for me, when we were talking about this forum, actually Roger and I were talking on the little Zoom meeting, and I was like, I don't know that I'm the right person on this to talk about ministry because I'm really bivocational. And you think about ministry, you always go towards full-time ministry, right? And so I was thinking there's no, I don't know that I'm the right person. I think I even told that to Faith. And then the more and more I think about, the more I realize that everything that I do is ministry. The reason why I got in banking is because I love people. And I think that I can make an impact with people's finances and making sure that I can help them with solutions. And that also comes with ministry. Ministry, we love people and we want to help people find God and solutions in the midst of their life and their crisis and what's happening. So when I think about my profession, again, I've been in banking for 12 years. I've been on the business end for a little while. Actually, Tyler, I know Tyler from banking, not because of Georgetown. But I would have never thought about being in banking when I was at Georgetown. I always thought maybe I'd just be a full-time minister. And then again, back then, I mean, that was still kind of like a scary thing. Although my mom is very well known in the Baptist world. And she's very outspoken, and a lot of people know her through the Baptist World Alliance and stuff like that. And so it felt like, what was it really that I wanted to do? And I think that was one of the things that Dr. Moody had a big impact on me, was that we can do ministry in every setting. Right. And so while I graduated with a religion major, I have a master's in business administration because I do love businesses, and I love seeing people grow. And I work on, I understand a lot of taxes and stuff like that. I feel like I can read that, like it makes sense to me. Right. So I think one of the things that I would tell myself is trust your gut a lot. A lot of times when things don't feel right, they're not right. And a lot of times when you get like that nervousness of, should I do that? Get in there and do it. I love that. I think all of us have talked about internships that we've done at Georgetown. I was blessed to do an internship in Portugal. And the Portuguese that I know is from Brazil. It's not the Portuguese from Portugal. So not only you had somebody that spoke Spanish, some English, different Portuguese. And I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to make this work. But it helped me really to get out of my comfort zone. I think that's one of the things that I would definitely encourage you guys, the ones that are sitting there. I know that I was that college student that a lot of times went to things just because I needed credit, right? But what I would encourage you guys is really take time to talk to people. Pick people's brains. If it's not your teacher, ask them if they know somebody. That's the beauty about Georgetown, is the networking piece that Georgetown has, is that if they're not it, they're going to put you in contact with the right person. I think one of the things for me, I think back in when I started in 2003, you never heard the whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's something that I'm huge in. It's something that I try to learn more. I just I just went to school just to do that so I could learn more about it. I think that's one of the things that Georgetown always encouraged you, was like, learn more, figure it out. And I think that's one of the things that I love about Georgetown. And I love this idea of career and Colin. I think back in our days, it was the meeting houses where we always had like the career conversations. But they were always very intimate, and it was like a likeness, people that were like you. We had like those conversations. And so don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no questions that are going to be dumb or that people are going to be like, what are you talking about? I wish that I asked more questions. But I would tell you that when I look at my personal life, and I look what I love to do, which is people, ministry and banking do collide. And I do feel like my ministry is that. And so that's what my kids see. I have two little ones. I did not marry somebody from Georgetown. We have Carolina 7, Nacho is 4, and Carolina always says, well, banking is easy, so that's just what I'm gonna do when I grow up. And I'm like, girlfriend, just because I make it look easy does not mean it's easy. But I love that my kids think, oh, well, mom's the youth minister, but she also has an 8-to-5 job and she's making a difference. And I hope that at the end of the day, that's what I do. And I hope that my clients and I hope that my students see that. And that's what I would tell myself, my younger self, is that, yes, you can make an impact. And just because we've seen the world like in a box, does not necessarily mean that that's what's going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So just be okay for that box to turn into a circle, and for you to just kind of get out of it. But I definitely encourage you guys to ask questions, raise your hand. If you're looking for internships, talk to people. It will plug you in and it will root at you into something that you may not know what that may look like. So that's my story.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Roger, you shared a little bit about your professional journey, I think, in your intro, but if there's anything you want to add or advice you would share for our students.
So here's the thing. How many, and I couldn't tell because they're way away, how many there said they were thinking about ministry? None.
Okay.
One? That sounds about right. So I would just say whereas I think my story maybe looks more linear than the others, I had no intention of being a pastor. It sounded like a really boring thing to me. And still some days I'm walking to the church on Sunday morning and I look and I go, I'm a Baptist pastor. What else going on here? And I thought I was going to be a missionary and go and do something exciting and fun. And I thought it just sounded really boring being a pastor. It's really not what job is like at all. Here's what I want to say, because I knew a lot of people that went to Georgetown, and even now, since we were there, even more so now, came from a Christian background, are pissed about the state of the world, want to help somehow. They see injustice. They think, obviously, that means I need to be a sociology major and social worker. And well, maybe you do. Maybe God's calling you to do that. But I don't know anyone else in my community that gets to do the stuff I do. If you're upset about Ferguson, what are you going to do about it? You don't live in Ferguson. You could work toward policy, national policies or whatever. You go to government affairs, you could do, or, the pastor, I'm on a police accountability board in my town. I can't do a damn thing about Ferguson. In Elizabethtown, know the police chief. I go to meetings, and when somebody's shot, the police chief calls a meeting and says, okay, let me help explain what happened here. And, I can dialogue with other interest groups in the community about that. What are you going to do about homelessness? You can go into government affairs and work toward funding. Our town isn't big enough. It doesn't have an organization strong enough. Someone's paid to do something about homelessness here. A collective effort of churches. And so as a pastor, I'm on the board of the group that does something about it and organizes people to do that. What have you done about Ukraine? Well, I have friends in Ukraine. And so while everyone was waiting to get money, I had $2,000 in the hands of people feeding people in Kiev that Saturday. Do you like to study? I don't know anyone that gets to do the work that I get to do, that I just keep going to college, and people keep paying me to do this. And so I went and got an MDiv, and then I got a postgraduate certificate. I'm a PhD student in the Netherlands. I go to the Netherlands once a year. I feel like I'm cheating at life sometimes, right? And so, I have all these friends from all over the world. I get to go to Morocco every once in a while and work with, are you concerned about migrant pricing? There are all these sub-Saharan Africans that are stuck in North Africa and are getting beaten by the police and dumped into the desert. And so I get to network with Christians on the ground in Morocco doing something about that. And so I guess I'd add to all of that, first of all, I get to be the guy in Elizabethtown paid to do that. I don't know a lot of other jobs like that are this flexible, give me the freedom. I'm working at home, that allow me to be an activist and allow me to be a counselor and allow me to get to just go spend a few hours drinking coffee at a cafe with a buddy in the morning, because that's also my job. That gets to help people keep their marriages together. That gets to help kids not kill themselves. That gets to be an advocate for women's leadership in my community. We're the only Baptist church in Elizabethtown that has female leaders. The only safe place for queer people to attend a Baptist church in Hardin County. So I don't know anyone else that gets to have that job. But maybe you didn't think that's what a pastor does, and that's not what some pastors do. But that's the pastor you could. Or, and here's the other thing. Maybe you're like, yeah, but I really like biology and want to be a doctor. Or whatever. Also know that Tyler means a lot to his pastor. I know that for a fact. Pastor needs Tyler's. Lori, it sounds like she's in a similar position in her church. I don't know Lori, but from what she's saying here. Or guess what? Most churches in the rubble of the North American church, which has quickly collapsed in the last it's been coming for 40 years. It happened in the last 3 years. It's over, right? Most churches will not be able to pay an associate minister. So maybe you've been in the chorale and you really enjoy that and you're going to be a doctor. You could be the bivocational music minister in some little church you end up going to. You could be the youth minister in the church you end up going to in the future. So there's lots of places for Christian leadership in the emerging church in North America that will not be able to fund the bloated, over-the-top staffing situations that a lot of our churches have got to enjoy since the 1950s, and that's all coming to an end.
Great, thank you so much, Roger. That was excellent. So I hope that you all took away some of those points. I want to give an opportunity for Olivia. I know she always likes to ask a question. So Olivia, if you want to turn your camera on and join us, and I'm just going to turn the platform over to you for a few minutes.
Well, I first want to say to Faith and to Stephanie, thank you for this partnership and allowing me to hop on and hear the wealth of knowledge that has been shared. Roger, I feel like you were preaching right there, brother. So I feel uplifted. I feel great. I got my feel for today. So thank you. But no, to Roger, to Paola, to Lori, and to Tyler, I just want to thank you just for sharing your time and your talent and your treasure with us today. It's amazing how you all are in various career fields, but you are all interconnected by, of course, your Georgetown experience, but also other areas. You know, you're talking about faith and then just talking about education and all that. So I'm just in awe, and it shows me once again how blessed I am to do what I do in alumni relations at Georgetown, and to just see how successful you all are, and like I said, the wealth of knowledge that you all just provided to our students and to us is unmatched. So thank you. But anytime we have alumni come to campus or grace us with their presence or with their knowledge in some capacity, I do like to ask one question, and that is, what is your favorite Georgetown College moment or story that you feel is appropriate to share? I think it's a neat way to allow our students and me selfishly to just hear about some of your Georgetown experiences, and it can be from Greek to non-Greek to ministry related, something that you all did at 2 a.m., you know, one Saturday morning, something like that. But I would love to hear you all share your favorite Georgetown experience. And I will yield to whoever wants to start, and then whoever wants to go next. We'll just kind of go in that sequence.
I mean, I feel compelled, like I should say, oh, it was graduation on Giddings Lawn. It was clearly the capstone event of Georgetown for me. But I immediately think of late night or early morning, hear me, like 2 a.m. road trips to what was Sam's Truck Stop, which is right on the Fayette County, Old 25 Fayette County, Scott County line. I'm not exactly sure what it is now, maybe a Mexican restaurant. And we would go to Lexington, and we would go to the latest, back in the day, movie that they had when Lexington Green had a movie theater. And we would come back and get hamburgers and grilled cheese and steak fries at Sam's. And Sam's was a truck stop, even though it was on Old 25, not a lot of truck traffic. I guess it was just from the 75 exchange right there. And they stayed open all the time. And I mean, we felt like we had a table at Sam's like a good old trucker. And we'd study there on occasion. We'd eat steak fries and hamburgers and grilled cheese on more occasions, and even some milkshakes. And if you have that calf table I was talking about where you always go to, I mean, I felt like we had an annex at Sam's. And you know what? That was all 4 years. As a freshman, someone introduced me to that experience, and I then, of course, needed to pass it down to other young Tigers. But those would be some very clear and very great memories that were made, off campus at Georgetown.
Very good. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Lori Beth, for LB.
Hey, I'll share mine and I'll switch it. I don't know, because I shared mine last time when I spoke on campus, but one of the other ones is, listen, you guys, you like breakfast like crazy, and you eat breakfast for dinner. And I learned this at Georgetown. But one of my favorite memories is when Dr. Crouch and his wife will serve breakfast at midnight. And it was always just a fun activity. It was just mind blowing to me that people eat breakfast for dinner. I was like, you don't do that. But so that was one of those things. And then my other, one of my favorite memories, and I can still remember it like it was yesterday, is when we had games in the quad. And everybody is just down there. We had that mud, what was it called? The mud fist or something. And we will have games and stuff like that. That was always just fun, just to find people on the silliness of life. But yeah, so that was one of my, I guess, 2 memories.
Thank you, Paola. Grub Fest.
I think No, and I just think because it's emblematic of so many other things, I'm going to say my stakeout. And I don't know if I know the college tried to put the kibosh on stakeouts at one point, and maybe they just took them off campus. I hope we're still working to be able to do that, even if it's not supposed to happen. But if it's not, what would happen is if you got engaged while you were a student, your fraternity brothers would lie in wait, apprehend you, and then strip you down to your boxers and tie you to box springs. And then you called out two friends who were also stripped of their boxers, thrown on top of you, not tied down, which is important. Then there was a lot of food and stuff that was poured on you. And then the organization would circle up around you. And then as soon as the circle up was over, friends who were not tied down, your sacrifices, got up and chased everyone trying to get said food all over them. And then your fiance had to come out and tie you and clean you up and stuff. And so we were accused of hazing. And why it's not hazing is because everyone was involved, right? It's just a juvenile. But what I loved about it was, as juvenile as it was a celebration. It was a celebration of your commitment, your friendship, your emerging family. And it was a way that all of your friends did this goofy thing, this messy thing together. And so for me, that's emblematic of the way that college and my friends there supported me as I got married in college. We ended up having our first child while still in college, which was a little crazy. And my friends were always a part of that. We would go on boxer runs. I would put my son in his diaper and he would go on a boxer run. And so
Well, that is adorable, Roger. It's funny. So several other hashtag Career Ready series ago, we had an alum, Annette Gatchett. Her husband was a member of PHA, and she was telling us about the stakeout. Now, we didn't get the firsthand experience like what you just provided, so thank you for that. I had no idea that was even a thing, but to hear that was a positive experience for you is awesome.
you know that photographic history book they did about 20 years ago for the college? That's my stakeout in there.
Oh, wow.
So it's forever documented, my stakeout in Georgetown College history.
Well, we need to resurface that photo.
Well, I could probably echo a lot of what Roger said and LB and Paula. I mean, there are just so many memories that I had during my time. I also went through a stakeout there, which was interesting. I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as Roger did, because I'm a guy that takes I don't like being hot, sticky, and I take 2 showers a day, so people dumping stuff on me wasn't real fun.
With your stakeout.
Yeah. But I would just say during my 4 years at Georgetown, it's a countless amount of memories, probably similar to what Roger said, and to LB's point, the random 2:00 in the morning trips that we would take, and not even that, the random 2:00 trips, like we're just going to go to another, we don't have any classes on Monday, we're going to go to another state, and we decided to leave at 2 a.m. and we traveled to Michigan, and we went to the Detroit Auto Show on a whim. We decided to go at 2 a.m. and just drove and got up there at 9, before 9 o'clock in the morning, and just the randomness of those memories. I still laugh about to this day. But the relationships that I have there, to Paolo's point earlier, I have 2 kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old now. And the individuals that I went through my fraternity, PHA, my boat class, those guys, I still keep in contact with all of those folks today. And my kids call those guys uncle. I'm still that close with those individuals, and we get together. We don't see each other as often as we could. There are a few that are still around here and locally, but we see those individuals. But my kids call those guys uncle. And so that's how close I was to those individuals at Georgetown. I still keep in contact with a couple of professors that are no longer at Georgetown that are either at different institutions or in different career fields now, but they helped give me a start. And we still keep in contact with them. I ran into Dr. Clotter in Frankfurt not that long ago, pre-pandemic, a couple of years ago. And, he brought students up there, and he just looked up, and I saw him, and I was actually getting ready to go testify at the table in Frankfurt, and he had a group of students there from Georgetown College. And those relationships to me are just so invaluable. And so I don't know if it's one memory, but more of a collection of memories. But the relationships that you build at Georgetown are everlasting. And if you continue to cultivate those, and it's just like in anything else, if you continue to cultivate those in your personal and professional life, you never know what those next opportunities are going to be. And so I cannot say enough how invaluable the lessons I learned at Georgetown were. Those interpersonal and personal relationships that I have were able to forge there and also maintain. So I can't speak. Like I said, I'll never have a terse word to say about my time at Georgetown. It was honestly the best 4 years of my life. Some of the best memories that I've had, and some of the longest lasting friendships. I still, like I said, all those guys that I went through my time at Georgetown with, they're my brothers for life. I mean, I truly feel that they're to me, they're as close as my family. I consider them family. So.
Very good. Well, thank you, Tyler. And Tyler has remained very involved in campus as well. He served as the PHA advisor for some time. And so we're definitely thankful to Tyler for that. But I just want to thank all of you for what you shared, because Roger and Paola, you all have been back to campus recently to speak. Lori Beth, you actually worked on campus, and I'm sure still involved in other endeavors. So I appreciate you for that. And then obviously, Tyler, the way in which you serve campus, even still, just appreciate that so much. And I just want to thank you again for giving your time, talent, and treasure to Georgetown. We absolutely need it, especially in these days. And we're thankful for your support, and thankful for the stories that you shared. I always enjoy hearing those. And if there's anything that I can ever do for you, please let me know. I did think it was neat to see just some of the things that you all were involved in. I know several of you all were presidents, ambassadors, and were involved in other things. And to see how you remain involved in campus is just beautiful. So I truly thank you for that. If there's anything that I can ever do for you, please let me know. And Faith and Stephanie, I'm going to yield to you all.
Thank you so much, Olivia. We are about at time, but I did want to see if there were any questions from our students for our guests. Not all at once. Okay. Well, again, thank you all so much. I do have the Nexus code. I'm going to stop our Facebook Live really quickly. And then I will share that.
So back to this thing